On reviewing video clips from the last week, I realised that I've missed something out that's fairly significant. The Roland McDonald House is not for people who are going in for minor surgeries like a tonsillectomy. It's for either very young children or for older children but vulnerable adults, that kind of thing, who are going in for a long time, whose parents want to be nearby. And it's all managed by a group of individuals who are very good at prioritising the needs of those that use the service. So it's all managed very well. Matthew lived for the big concerts that we used to do, but the more stories I've got are about the time that I spent the most time with him, which is during rehearsals. Matthew frequently suffered from something that we referred to in friendly terms as rocket syndrome, where the conductor would start a piece of music at a certain tempo, and then slowly the drums would take it faster and faster and faster until your fingers couldn't keep up with him anymore. And Mr. Gibbs would stop the band and say, "What are you doing, Matt?" This little face would pop up from behind the drums going, "What?" We were on the radio! Or, more specifically, David spoke to Graham Liver at BBC Radio Lancashire this morning. He had a chat about our walk and our fundraiser and what the cause was for, and he did a really good job. We're very proud of him. Meanwhile, the fundraiser has hit its third goal of £1,500, so the bar has been raised again to £2,000. And meanwhile, Holly has organised a raffle. She's been in contact with some local businesses who have donated some prizes, and she's organising that. That's all in her park, but she's received a really good response from that. So again, gratitude to the businesses that have donated, anybody that's bought a raffle ticket or anybody that's donated a bit of money. This seems to be going really well, and we've still got 3 weeks to go. We used to have a lot of fun with drum sets on coaches. They were often they had to be the first thing to go onto the coach because they were so big and bulky, along with the tubers. They had to go in first, otherwise you couldn't get anything else in. And one time we got back to B43, our music room, and found that the skin of the drum had ripped right down the middle. That was a very expensive mistake. I think that only happened to one other drum in the time I was at the school, but it's one of those things you don't forget once it's happened. You join us on an absolutely miserable 10th day this afternoon. So after we were saying, "Oh yeah, everything's looking wonderful," the weather does this to us. This wasn't scheduled, the weather's just picked up. Oh, this is pleasant, isn't it? But you know, we've still got to do 10,000 steps, so let's get on with it. Allons-y, all that. I haven't a shred of evidence, but I'm convinced it's harder to walk uphill in the rain. It's certainly less pleasant. I think I'll save a story about Matthew for somewhere else. Goodbye! If I had wanted that to happen, it wouldn't have. This is about as sheltered as it's going to get. Round there is no better. At the end of last week, I mentioned that Matthew was my worst critic. That's not without just cause. One particular example that I'll share with you, we were sharing our composition work in music class. And Holly had said, "Yeah, Phil, that's great." And Lucy had said, "Yeah, Phil, that's great." And Matthew said, "Don't like it." I said, "Why not?" And he said, "It sounds too much like film music." I said, "Alright, Matt, so what do you suggest I do about it?" He said, "Bin it, start again." So I did, and to this day that is a technique that sometimes works really well. When things are not going right, bin it, start again. Oh, the irony. Well, it was absolutely impossible to get any kind of sound recording over at the usual spot. Once might be funny, but the electrical distortion just doesn't sound nice. Day number 11, and mercifully, there's no rain. The wind is still here, and it's like just sub-storm levels. But apart from that, it's quite difficult to navigate when you're at the top of a hill with no protection. Well, that's alright. Halfway there now. The other half of yesterday's story is that I was equally critical with Matthew as he was with me. We were once doing essays where we would both write an essay and then get each other to mark it. This was a classroom activity. It was a system of peer review. It worked very well. But we had the mark scheme with us. We knew what we would get marks for. And Matthew wrote this beautifully written, in his neatest handwriting, 4-page essay that didn't cover any of the criterion points. So I had to give him 0 marks. But I gave him half a mark for the effort. So I gave him half a mark out of 30. In fact, I think I've still got a picture of the essay somewhere. Matthew was amazing at composition. He could sit in front of a piece of manuscript paper or in front of a computer with Sibelius and write out motifs and themes and licks all day. He was fantastic at coming up with new ideas. He struggled a bit more with putting those ideas into harmony and making those sound nice, and he struggled even more with putting them into a structure that made sense, and particularly one that fit the brief. That's where I came in. I was much better than he was at putting those into a structure and adding some sensible harmony, but he was much better than I was at writing the original licks. And that creative banter, that back and forth, is probably what I miss the most. It's day 12. I can't believe nearly 2 weeks have gone by. But Lucy has managed to land us in the local free press, which is fantastic. Well done, Lucy. Thank you very much. A lovely little article was written about us and about the work we're doing for the fundraiser. They included some details about us and what we're doing in our lives, and they got almost every single detail wrong, which at least will maintain some kind of anonymity, because if every detail online about you is wrong, then nobody can ever find who you are. It's alright though. The spirit of the article is very much there. We are in fact raising money for Ronald McDonald House, and we have just passed £1,700, which is well on our way to our 4th target of £2,000. We are all constantly overwhelmed and amazed with how far we've managed to push that boat out. I was sceptical that we'd ever hit the £500 target, so I'm utterly blown away that we've already got this much. I can't imagine what it means to the charity, and I can't imagine what it means to the people that are impacted by the work of the charity. I think that's about all I've got to say for today. See you tomorrow. The Ronald McDonald House rely on donations to operate. As far as I'm aware, they don't have any external donors or sources of investment, which is why it's a cause that means a lot to Matthew's mum and dad and to his friends, us. Although I was sceptical that we'd hit our initial donation target, we've almost quadrupled it. This morning we woke up and it was at £1,940. That's a lot of money. And it will enable them to do a lot of good work. One of the other things that Matthew struggled with in terms of composition was an element of realism, in that he would write a very, very good but difficult to play section of music. So every now and again we'd find someone who was a player of the instrument that he'd just written for and say, what do you think of this? Just to get a bit of an insider information. And the number of times that the answer was, if you were to hand this to such and such a player, they'd tell you where you could stick it. Was phenomenal. So we needed a bit of help bringing him back down to real life. He loved to compose music as though everything he ever wrote was going to be performed by Black Dyke. It was often difficult to convince him to write something for the high school band, because he just wanted to write championship pieces. But that's alright, live a dream. The last point of note that Matthew really struggled with in music is music theory. He was a performer, and that's what he was good at. He was alright at theory, but he was not a music theorist. We tried to get him to pass his ABRSM Grade 5 music theory, and there is one sequence of letters in music that are really important. I shan't explain why, but it's F, C, G, D, A, E, B. And we just needed him to learn that. And days after weeks, there is nothing we could do to get it in his head that this sequence of letters was in this particular order. We came with, what's it called when you have words assigned? Not acronym, mnemonics, where you've got one word per letter. Didn't work. He just started substituting entire words, sometimes for letters that didn't have any place in music. But he tried. Oh, he tried. To his credit, eventually, he did well enough to pass his Grade 5 theory. And he was very pleased with himself, and so he should have been. What day is it? 14. We're on the 14th of March. This is the end of the second week. I've only just realised that. I realised it earlier this week. And we've hit target number 4. I don't think that target's going to be raised again. I think we're just going to see how much we can push past it. And we are more than halfway through the miles and the steps. But also, we're not going to raise that. We're just going to see how far we can get. We are... I keep saying we're blown away, but we are. It's such an amazing amount of money. And we haven't even added on Holly's raffle money yet, because she's organised this fantastic raffle. And then there's the gift aid to be included. It's a lot of money.